the old 54 has been keeping us on our toes here, and it's also been like, feels like they say, 20 below for like the last 3 days. So we've been kind of hibernating and keeping it close to home. I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing up in the air, get the exhaust attached, get the cross member built for underneath the transmission, and then we'll bring it back down, get this core support radiator in, make sure we don't need any parts for the cooling for the fans, if we're gonna run electric fans, all of that, figure out the D shaft and the angles on the steering over here, and then just make a list of any fittings, anything I need for the throttle, for the vintage air hookups, for the vacuum advance, all of that stuff. I need to get all of that on its way here, so I'm gonna go ahead, get her up in the air, and get to work. All right, so we are up underneath the 54. This is what's left of the original exhaust from the 235. I've got two nice little straight pieces running back. These are just kind of hanging here right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and run the original hangers back up, get those into the position they were when the truck came in. And then I'm going to put a piece of expanded exhaust on there so that these pieces can be detached. After that, I simply need to run a straight piece from there up to this area with a 45 to go up into the collector, into the manifold. Bender, make a couple of tabs for both ends here, and then I'll make a tab for the tranny to sit on. So here is the cross member for the transmission, and that bolts in up underneath the portioning valve up under there, and then here is all of the exhaust all buttoned up, gasketed ready to go. So we just need to measure for this drive shaft and deal with the gas tank, and we're pretty much done under here. I definitely could have just made a straight piece of sheet metal that runs straight across here. It's got one little curve in it. Welded that in there. Been perfectly fine. But I kind of wanted to play around with some stuff. So got the English wheel out, and I made this nice little dome, and that's going to come across there. And then I've got this nice little handheld like plenishing hammer. So I'm going to sit and play with this and just make it look kind of cool, and then I'll tack it into place. And after this dome is tacked in, I'll go back in and cut the back side out. So right now I've just got a couple low spots here and here. Run your hand across it. I've got a nice dome, and then it sinks a little. Nice dome, sinks a little on both sides. And I think that's just because I was trying to shape that over my leg to get it to fit into this area a little bit better. I'm going to actually run this through the English wheel on these spots and just try to stretch those out a little instead. Alright, so this is what we ended up with. Nice little dome. Come up, give us plenty of clearance, and look really nice on the inside. So we're going to go ahead and set this inside the truck. Make sure that this angle here is still correct, and go ahead and get this tacked together. So the 54 is moving along. The heater box is now fully installed. All the bracketry, everything is done. So that is in its house forever. Amy got the Vintage Air vent assembly and controls all mounted on the bottom side of the dash, and most of the wiring is all figured out where everything is going to go. I dealt with the big chewed up hole that was in the dash. I made this little panel that we're still going to paint and clean up, and that is where our triple gauges are going to go. So we will have a more modern oil temp and volt gauge sitting in there for now. We're going to use the original gauges on the driver's side yet, the speedo, tack, and fuel. It'll probably be next winter. We will be going through and redoing the whole cab on this thing. So we're really just trying to make it clean and user friendly for the owner, so he's got something fun and reliable to drive over the summer to do his swap meet trips and all of that stuff. The engine bay is about knocked out. We're just waiting on a few parts. I did get the throttle pedal and that assembly all installed and hooked up. I'm going to drop the distributor in this thing shortly. Alright, so it looks like we made a great big mess out of this thing. But we've got most of the wiring run to the front. All of that stuff's gonna go run down to the motor, into the starter. All of this stuff will get bundled up, come around for the lights and the horn. This stuff here will run, is already terminated down at the brakes and the dimmer switch, so that'll get bundled up. This pile will run straight down that firewall up on the frame down to the rear. We got the spark plug wires done, bundled up, distributors in. It's set at like 12 degrees right now, so that should be good enough to start. We fought and wrestled our asses off to get these freaking belts on. Thank you, March. And was able to get the mechanical fan, all of that on and adjusted, and the heater hoses together. So I'm pretty much waiting on these two 45-degree fittings here for the AC. I've got to go pick up the two radiator hoses, and I ended up accidentally ordering the wrong U-joint for the steering, so that'll still have to get knocked out up here. But yeah, we are getting really damn close to hearing this thing roar. Alright, so we got Amy in here getting everything tidied up in the engine bay, getting the new wire loom on, just getting that all nice and fancy. Inside the cab and leaning over these fenders, getting the last little bit of wiring buttoned up in here that we can get to before we throw it up on the lift. Amy's just finishing up the last couple of power wires for the vintage air setup. Everything else is pretty much terminated and where it's going to be. And one last little bundle to wrap up that'll run under the car that we'll get when it's up on the lift. Everything is assembled on the front. We have the trans cooler, the condenser, radiator. Everything is pretty much ready to be plumbed up underneath the car. I've got the two lines for the transmission that I'll have to run down along the frame rail, the lower radiator hose, and the two fittings for the AC. So we're going to get that wrapped up and move along into the inside. Amy is going to daisy chain and get the gauges ready to go and start terminating everything underneath the dash so that I can climb under there, get it all bundled up nicely, zip tied, up and looking neat, and out of everybody's way when they're sitting in there and out of view, hopefully. And that pretty much leaves the gas tank deal, which I've been kind of putting off, but making all kinds of excuses that, you know, the longer it sits, the less fumes are going to be in it or whatever, and it just needs to get done. So I'm going to head over there, get the stuff together, cut and modified that I need for the filler neck, so that when this thing goes up in the air, then we can just get it knocked up and fired. Knocked up, yeah. We're going to knock it up. Alright, so I am finally onto this fuel tank issue. I am going to cut that ugly piece of copper off of there and make a nice little hole. And then I made this little flange here. We'll put a gasket on it, screw this down, and that'll give me a nice 2-inch opening to go up to that filler neck. Screws and some sealant. And that's how we don't blow up. Alright, so I drilled the holes, got those tapped, put some new screws in it, gasket, and then a bunch of Black Magic sealer that is fuel resistant. So there is our new filler opening that I can now run hose on up out the fender. This is for our sending unit, and right now I'm letting all the water drain out because I actually filled this thing all the way up to the top of the holes with water before I started cutting because I didn't want to explode. In here, everything is laid out where we need it for the gauges to go in. Yeah, a little bit of a mess, but it'll be fine. Got a couple of grounds I want to hook up. We're going to get these gauges, round gauges, in front of the steering wheel first because they're kind of a pain to get to, and I'd like to have some openings to get my frickin' big forearms into and actually be able to reach everything without cutting the crap out of myself, which would be nice. And then we'll get the vent tubes in, glove box center, and get this thing up in the air and finish up the last little bit of wiring that needs to go underneath the neutral safety switch, some exhaust clamps, hook up the starter and all of that for the last time, and get the gas tank in. We should be ready to roll. Alright, so we've been kicking some ass. We got everything done on this between me and Amy. Everything is ready for this thing to fire tomorrow. We're gonna stop, pick up some gas. I want to slap in a new battery, and then we can start cranking this thing, get the oil pressure up.
Now say, take 4.
Take 4.
Am I starting it or going?
Starting it.
Ready?
Yep. Freaking beautiful.
We were at like 60.
Oil pressure?
Yeah.
Awesome. For a minute, and then go around the block, go for a little cruise.
Turn that brand new heat on. Alright, well here she is, all done, wiped down. I just got back from a few mile trip, making sure she's shifting, making sure she's not overheating, there's no clunks, rattles, anything like that. I would drive this thing to California and back. It is smooth, comfortable, ready to go back to our owner so he can enjoy it.